But let's begin this morning in Washington, D.C., where President Trump will be speaking any moment now at a White House Religious Liberty Summit. Last night, the president said his decision on which city to send U.S. troops to is going to come soon, and it could come as soon as today or perhaps even tomorrow. And this morning, he bragged on Truth Social about deploying the National Guard to Washington, D.C., but this follows a very controversial post that he made just a few days ago, in which he said that Chicago was about to find out why it's called the Department of War. He doubled down on his deployments a little over an hour ago, saying D.C. is a safe zone in just a matter of weeks. He then said thank you to himself before asking who's next. Thank you, President Trump. Who's next? He said to himself. Let's bring in CBS News White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi. Olivia, it's good to see you. So first, let's break down these new CBS polls that show just how American voters feel about the president's decision to deploy federal troops, National Guard troops in D.C. and beyond.
Hey, good morning, Vlad. It's good to be with you. Yeah, our Anthony Salvanto, our polling director, found that a majority of Americans actually oppose the deployment of the National Guard here in Washington, D.C. It's about 57% of Americans that are opposed to it, and about 58% of respondents said that they oppose the National Guard being deployed to other cities. I do want to hone in and break down on some of the numbers because our Anthony Salvanto went by party and looked at this as well. They found that about 85% of Republicans favor this move, favor the president deploying the National Guard to other cities. They say it reduces crime, it makes them feel personally safer, even if they aren't in those cities themselves. But here is the key number there that I want you to look at, and that's 64% of independents oppose this. That's what's important here, Vlad, because of course this is a very polarized country and a lot of people have feelings on either side, and clearly that's reflected in this poll in front of us where 93% of Democrats oppose this move. But it's those independents that are the key voters here, the swing voters that President Trump and the Republicans need to hold on to for those midterms next year. So this is an interesting move that they do oppose. Now, when the question was asked, does deploying the National Guard to U.S. cities actually reduce crime? Again, you see that polarization. 89% of Republicans say yes, it does. 86% of Democrats say no, it doesn't. But 55% of independents say, no, this does not reduce crime. But again, you know, it's a majority. It's not an overwhelming majority. It's pretty evenly split there. So quite notable kind of how Americans are feeling, particularly about the deployment of National Guard troops and how it kind of falls on party lines, except for those independents, which are trending to say that they are opposing it.
So perhaps, Olivia, those independents feel the way that they do because of the language and the messaging that the president has used when talking about deploying these troops. For example, we talked about that post that he posted of himself dressed up as Colonel Kilgore from the movie Apocalypse Now. Of course, the famous scene, I love the smell of napalm in the morning. Smells like victory. Here, the president suggesting that he is going to war with the city of Chicago and its citizens, which, as you know from having listened to U.S. Senator Tammy Duckworth, who herself is a combat veteran, suggesting that the president, in using this language, is illegal to suggest that the United States would go to war against its own citizens. So as I know the president snapped at some reporters when they pointedly asked him if or why he was using that language. But what did he say?
Well, the president was asked about this over the weekend as he was heading to the U.S. Open of whether or not he is going to war with an American city. He said he's not going to war with the city, but he would hope that there's some invitation to have him bring the National Guard in and deal with crime. Tom Homan, who is also the director or Trump's border czar, as he is called here at the White House, was asked about this on CNN, whether they're going to war in an American city. He said, no, we're going to war on crime. We're going to war with criminals. We're going to war with the cartel. We're not going to war with the city of Chicago and its people. And that's what President Trump has kind of been saying, where he's saying we're going to go in there and root out crime. This is not for the citizens who live there. But of course raises the question, especially if we see National Guard here on the streets. Sometimes they're arresting people who are not here legally, and sometimes it's people who are and are committing crime. So it's the question, are you there to deal with immigration or are you there to deal with crime? And we have yet to see, Vlad, whether or not there will be a full deployment of the National Guard in Chicago.
Yeah. And to the president's point, it would make sense, I think, for governors and for mayors to try and work with the president and with the federal government to try and reduce crime, if that is indeed the intention. And that's, I guess, why the president was saying he hopes that somebody from Chicago gives him a call about that. All right, we'll see how it happens, how it breaks down. Olivia, thank you as always, my friend. Appreciate it.